my friends. Galzeerah with Galzeerah Fitness, and this is a short video giving you instructions on how to treat your muscle and myofascial tightness, pain, and constriction using a foam roller and or a rolling pin. So this is not a workout. You're not going to burn many calories with this, but this is a type of self-treatment, self-care, recovery procedure. So when you do exercise or just with life in general, muscles get tired sometimes and sore. Muscle building, strengthening, even cardio, you're basically creating micro trauma with every workout in order for those fibers to get larger, and hypertrophy when you're building strength, or at least to lengthen and get more pliable and increase tensile resistance when you are building flexibility and stretching. But whether due to workouts or life, repetitive motion, sitting too long, driving too long, we all have tightness. So stretching is the cornerstone, and I often, or always pretty much, include stretching at the end of my workout videos. And again, I am planning to make just stretching kind of a good daily stretch routine for tightness, and potentially we'll do some stretching videos for certain muscle groups, certain high-risk populations, stretches for desk jobs, etc. So stretching's foundational. Rolling, myofascial release, this kind of stuff is one step beyond, where when I was in my 20s I found that stretching was plenty to keep things from being too sore. Now in my 30s I need to stretch and do some of this stuff. Not every day, maybe 3 days a week. 2 or 3 days would be good for a routine. If you have never used a foam roller, you've probably seen these at your gym, or you've bought one and then didn't know how to use it, or you have a friend that uses it. So that's what this video is for, is to just teach you some basics. So there's basically two types of muscle tendon tightness. You have kind of a chronic shortening if you just don't stretch, or maybe you're really tall and your bones grew longer when you were growing up, faster than your muscles and tendons could keep up with it. So that's actual shortening. So that's the kind of shortness where, oh, my hamstrings, I can't stretch, because the muscle length itself is a little shorter than it should be in proportion to your bone. So stretching helps with that. But the other kind of tightness is just general constriction. So you might have plenty of length and be able to stretch quite far, but it feels tight, and that is usually due to fascial tightness. Fascia is that soft tissue connective layer, kind of like if you've ever worked with raw chicken, it's that whitish clear saran wrap type layer. So every creature with muscles has that. It is just a connective tissue. It's a protective sheath. It encases muscles, and then groups of muscles, and then whole body regions. So fascial tightness, that constricts often when you have muscles that get sore. And oftentimes fascial tightness is even worse. It's painful. That's the type of thing where you get a massage and they touch your right low back and you get pain and soreness on your left shoulder because the fascia is aligned diagonally along the backs and even along the front of the body. So anyway, rolling and direct pressure, massage techniques do a little bit more beyond stretching. Stretching does lengthen the muscle, and to some degree it does work on the fascia, but rolling using actual direct mechanical pressure to those areas of fascial constriction will get a lot more benefit than stretching alone. So both are good, but doing some fascial release with techniques like this will be even better to do than just plain stretching. So if you are new to rolling, I don't necessarily recommend you start with all foam roller. It is very painful the first few times you do it if you have not yet done it, and if you're a normal human being with tightness and muscle soreness. So just be warned, the first several times you try the foam roller, some of the exercises will suck. and it gets better, and eventually it feels like stretching, like a release, like, oh, it used to be really painful and now it's better. Couple words of caution: you don't want to roll, either rolling pin or put weight on and roll over direct bone. So stay away from your kneecaps, the front of the hip bones. It's okay to roll your spine along this because the pressure is dispersed, but if you feel like a hard block and it hurts, you're probably putting pressure right on the bone. So we want to avoid that. You don't need to bruise the outside of the bone. But even if you're doing it right, it still can be sore. So if you're brand new, I would suggest you get your rolling pin, the type that spins like that. And one of the most common tight areas, if you have knee pain or hip pain, this will help start rolling your quad muscles. So sitting, you don't have to sit on the floor. Sitting in a kitchen chair works really good. And you're just rolling with some pressure the length of the muscle. So again, not right on the hip bone and not right on your kneecap. And you're just getting the quad, getting the inner quad, getting the mid part, and getting the outer quad and the IT band. So you'll feel, most likely, if you're a normal human being with some tightness and soreness, you will feel little knots, lumps, and bumps. So those painful areas just are tight, knots in your muscles. They're where the fascia is all gummed up. Just work at it for a couple minutes. It'll get better as you go. So you may not get it, oh, that feels good now, I'm pain-free, but work at it, a minute or two each area, okay? So that's a good place to start. You can also roll your calves. This can be more intense if you roll on it with your body weight. So first, I would suggest just rolling with some pressure, but not too much. Same thing. You'd work 60 seconds, at least maybe a couple minutes in one region. This doesn't take a ton of time, thankfully. And get the calf. I suppose you could roll this muscle. This is your anterior tib. You got a few muscles on the front of the shin. It's not a common area that people complain about hurting, but if you have shin splints or pain in the front of the leg, you could even roll the front. Just remember to stay off the actual shin bone. So your tibia is more center and medial. So no need to go over here. Keep it more towards the outer side, and you can roll both. Likewise, if you have foot cramps or plantar fasciitis, you can roll the muscles on the bottom of your feet with a rolling pin. Works really good. So lower body, hamstring, rolling pin on the back of the upper thigh, getting that hamstring. And again, you don't have to be on the floor if that's uncomfortable. Sit on the edge of a chair. I keep pointing that way because my kitchen chairs are out there. Sorry, guys. Okay, you got your glutes, another common trouble area. If you're tight from working out, roll the glutes with a rolling pin. And again, you will feel some tight areas, some knots, and you just want to work at it. 60 to 120 seconds. And again, you want to stay off direct bones, so stay off this greater trochanter. Don't roll right over it or you'll end up with an irritation potentially. But anywhere that feels like it's somewhat pliable is muscle. So roll that. You can even roll the low back a little bit with a rolling pin. Kind of get it in that fleshy area. I don't know that I'd take a rolling pin right to the back of the spine. It won't really do any harm, but if it's sore, don't do that. So just off onto the side, get the muscles in the low back. And then for upper body, if you have some tight forearms, rolling pin works great. I would sit at the kitchen table and you can roll one-handed with that forearm supported. This is great if you have tennis elbow, pain on this side, or golfer's elbow. And by the way, those two terms, you can get those tendinitises from tennis and golf, but most people have tennis elbow or golfer's elbow, not from those sports. So often repetitive movement, typing, mousing, that kind of thing can do it. So you can roll forearm, do back and front, so whatever's tight. And again, you'll feel those constrictions. You'd work for just a minute or two each area. You won't necessarily get it pain-free the first time you roll it, especially if you've had trouble, but you just do a minute or two with whatever pressure you can tolerate. It is harder to get it one-handed, so if you have a loving family member, roommate, friend, they could do the rolling pin for you for the forearms. Just remind them, stay off the direct areas of bone, because that will hurt and not be productive. Rolling the neck and shoulders, I mean, I've experimented, it's hard to do that. Better is some trigger point release with a Theracane, and I'll do a different video. But that's some basics. So again, if you are new to rolling and you haven't worked too much on that kind of myofascial constriction, I would start with a rolling pin. Do that for a week or two. Try to get every other day. When that gets easier, then you can progress to a foam roller. These are fairly cheap. You can get them on good old Amazon, probably for 15 to 20 bucks. They come in different levels of density. So if you're brand new to foam roller, do yourself a favor and get one that's kind of pliable. Get one a little squishy, so that way you don't hate it, can't tolerate it, and then give up and don't do it anymore. This one is a high density foam roller just because I had been using a more beginner one for months or maybe a year, and it was getting too easy and wasn't benefiting me. They do make these even more rigid. They make ones with little like massage knobbies on them, so they're all nubbly, look like they have little rounded spikes. I haven't progressed to that yet, but that gets in there and really helps to open up those constricted knots and fascia buildup. So, foam roller, if you do have one or you're borrowing one and want to try it, again, I will warn you it's painful at first. So let's hit some of those same muscle groups. I'll show you some stretches to do with a foam roller and spinal mobilizations, but that is for a different video. This is just basic myofascial self-care, so self-release with the roller. But we'll get into it in future videos. So, quads. So when you've rolled with the rolling pin and you kind of know what to expect, you've done that for a couple weeks and you're ready to progress. This really does help if you can get onto the floor. So you can also, if you don't have a real soft roller, but you need to modify, have a squishy mat, have an exercise mat that has some cushion, or do this on your bed if it's big enough. So that way it won't be quite as much of a shock to those knots if this is the first time you've tried it. So, you line yourself up 90 degrees with the roller, and then you're just moving the body weight. I usually get one end of the quads first because that's a fairly large muscle group. I'm just going mid-quad up towards the pelvis, but not on the bone. So again, you would work for a minute or two in each area. And if this is the first time you've done it, remember, you're not gonna necessarily, you won't do any harm. I've had clients that I've worked with in my full-time job that want to cry or do cry the first time I subject them to the foam roller. But as long as you're not on the bone, you will get through it. So don't force it because muscles will just get tight and irritable, but it is normal to have a good level of discomfort. Okay, so you get one end, and then I'm going to come down. You get the tops of the knees, so staying off the kneecap, but just from mid-thigh to patella, but not on the patella. Patella is plural. So if you're following me along at home, you should be feeling those knots, some lumps and bumps in the quads. And it may be a little sore, but as long as it's, you know, tolerable and you can breathe, you're not weeping, we're good. So if that gets too easy, and if you've done the foam roller a few times and you want to really target quads one at a time, what you can do is take one leg, cross it over the other. So now I'm hitting just that right leg, and now I have more wiggle room, so I can turn a little bit and now I'm getting the inner quad. And just working out all of those knots. And again, You probably won't take a knotted, tight, irritable muscle full of trigger points and do this for 60 seconds or so and make it magically like it's never had any strain in its life, but it will make it better. And you're also getting a lot more blood flow into those tight areas, so you get benefit after you've rolled for several hours just because you've basically called the central nervous system's attention to that tight area. So by causing yourself a little discomfort, the brain goes, whoa, 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 why are you so tight down there, quad? Loosen up, and helps kind of override some of that unconscious guarding. So that can be helpful just even hours after you've done this type of stuff, it will feel better. So now I'm kind of twisting a little to the side. I'm getting the side of the quad. And again, this is kind of more the complete foam roller technique I would use. One quad then the other. And then I'm going to get the hip flexor. So again, you're staying off the bone itself. Just going right below it. Play around with the angle a little bit so you can really get into that constricted muscle and fascia. And I am getting lumps and bumps, but I've done the foam roller technique for 2 or 3 years now, so it is kind of like stretching. When you're really tight, it's sore, but it feels good because you're getting all that good oxygen in there. More blood flow, all the tissues going, we needed that. Good. Okay, while we're here, you can also roll your IT band, iliotibial band. You got one on each side. It goes from one of your hip flexors up here, becomes tendon, crosses the hip, goes all the way down the leg, and actually connects below the knee. IT band tightness and fascial constriction is one of the leading contributors to knee pain. So if you have pain around your kneecap, most likely at least one cause or one irritating factor is your IT band is tight or gnarly and constricted, and it's exerting too much pressure from this side of the knee and causing your kneecap potentially to drift over or to tilt. Very, very common. So to get that IT band, we're just going to turn sideways. If this is too much, because this does suck the first times you do it, take your top leg, put it on the floor, and take some of your weight out of this. If you've done it several times and you're feeling like you need a little more, bring that leg up or up overhead to get even more pressure on it. So I am getting my outer hip, so we're starting way up top. Feels good. I've been in the vehicle a lot today. It was a day off and I visited family, which was great, but a lot of sitting and driving, so that feels really good. So I'm getting kind of the upper band, even above the hip bone, getting into some of the glutes, the side glutes, your glute medius. Good. And again, I'm rolling over that hip bone, but I'm not staying on it. So, I mean, you're not going to break anything unless you're severely, severely osteoporotic, and you would know by now if you are. So it's okay to kind of touch over it, but just don't jam all your weight onto the bone area. So now I'm getting the side, so getting the length of that tendon. And again, I've had clients cry, but they did come back for their next session, so we were still friends because they did feel better after. Okay, so I'm going to switch. I'm going to get the left side, so I'm assuming you're following along. If you're, again, a beginner and you're using the rolling pin, just keep rolling and store this info for future use. Because this is not just instructional, this is kind of a guided foam roller recovery self-care workout. Not a workout for strength or endurance, but just a good recovery process. Alright, so I'm getting the upper quad right now. I'm rolling right into those hip flexors and then about mid-thigh. And again, you can turn a little bit. Turn face up, turn face down. That way you get the quad, the 4 different sections of quad muscle. Okay, and I'm going to go down a little bit, get the mid-quad down towards the knee. And again, if you're doing 2 legs, you can just keep rolling both together. this whole time. Or move on if you've had enough, or take a break and get some water. So again, this is part of my normal foam roller routine. I'm taking way longer because I'm excited and I'm telling you all kinds of good info about it. But I usually use my foam roller and or rolling pin maybe every second or third day. So probably 2 to 4 times a week. And it depends too how sore I am. If I have up to some weights, or I'm doing new harder exercises, or just sore from doing a lot of like outdoor stuff, shoveling snow in the winter, I might do this more often. So again, 2 days a week minimum for maintenance. Kind of undo some of your life and fitness strains, but more if needed. You're not really going to go wrong. If you find that you get lots of bruising with this, you might want to back off a little bit. Don't do it so often, but if you do get bruising, you know, in a reasonable amount, little bruising here and there, that's okay. You're just so tight with those knots that putting pressure that would otherwise be tolerable, you just had so much tension there that it caused extra blood flow and a little bleeding into the muscle. So small bruising, no big deal. Good, all right. So getting that quad, getting those knots, got the hip flexor. I'm gonna turn sideways. So I'm putting my back to you. You're still my friend. We're rolling the IT band. Again, if you need less pressure, put that top leg down. Good. Now we're just rolling the length of that IT band. Make sure that you drink plenty of water in general, but especially when you're doing rolling. So if you are dehydrated, you've only had 3 or 4 cups of water today, this will hurt a lot more. If your tissues are nice and hydrated and pliable, it will be a lot more tolerable and you'll get more benefit. Okay, getting the outside of the glute. So we're getting the outer hip, glute med, and the top of the IT band. And again, I'm taking longer, but on average 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes per region. Good. Okay. So quads, IT bands, done. Calves. That's a chronic trouble area for me. I have flat foot alignment, and so I have to use a lot of extra muscles to try to support my arch, and that's a whole nother video for another day, but calf tightness is common for many reasons. So you can roll your calves. Same thing, if you're fairly new, you might want to do both. This does take a little bit of upper body strength. You are getting a free tricep workout by doing this. I suppose if that's too much, you could be on your elbows and you just get smaller sections at a time. You could lie down and do it. You'd get really small sections at a time, but that would work. So if you can't prop up on your arms, you can still get into those calves. Again, if you need more, cross one foot over the other. And because I've done this a lot, my calves actually benefit with a little more pressure. So you may want to use your good old rolling pin and actually put your weight on it, as I mentioned earlier. So it's not a huge area, but I'm limited in my range because I can only move myself so far with my arms. So let's get the lower part rolling over the Achilles tendon. Just stay off the bone area, but you can roll that tendon. Don't go too crazy because it is more vulnerable than the muscle, but get it a little bit. And then really get into the fleshier area, getting the calf. And again, I'm tilting, so I'm getting more inner calf, tilting this way, working it all the way up just under the knee, and then rolling this way, getting the outer calf. You do have muscles on either side of the ankle. So depending on your anatomy, if you have really nice fleshy muscles and good thick calves, you may be able to turn more directly sideways on it. I'm pretty bony in my lower legs and forearms and wrists and ankles. So if you don't have as much padding and your muscles are more sinewy and stringy, it may not tolerate really rolling onto the side. One place you really want to not irritate is right on the outer side where the head of the fibula touches the tibia. So those two bones, the smaller one comes out here, attaches here. You can feel it is bony and it is tender, and your common peroneal nerve runs right behind it. So you don't need to give yourself nerve irritation. So make sure you stay in the muscly part for all of this rolling, but especially the calf. I switch sides. So if you're doing one at a time, switch. And again, getting that Achilles tendon a little bit, staying off the bone. I'll show you in another video at some point. I'll have one on cross friction massage, which is a technique you can do for yourself pretty much to any tendon you can reach. And that helps tremendously if you have chronic tendonitis. But this starts to get at it, so we'll save it for another day. There's just so much knowledge, so many things out there I want to keep learning, and so much stuff that I've learned that I want to share with you. Good. So again, turn a little bit, get inside, get outside, roll the calves. Good. And you can also, again, use your foam roller for the calves. This is a little harder actually for that because you're putting all your weight on it. Okay, let's get the hamstrings. A lot of people have trouble with the hamstrings. So again, you're new to it, try both legs. And again, if you have trouble propping up, you could just be on elbows. You only get a couple inches of distance at a time, that's fine. You can just keep changing your position. But for the sake of time, because I usually do it this way, we'll roll. And again, if you need a little more, cross one leg over the other. And again, try to get the outer side, the middle, the inner side. Muscles are multiplanar. There's not just a front and a back, there's a side to side. Good, I switched legs, so switch if you're following me. If you're new to the foam roller and you're trying to do everything while I'm going on and on about all of this good stuff, you're probably like, oh my word, Galzeerah, shut up, I'm sore. So take breaks. Good, and again, it's not a workout, but hey, I guess you are getting some core stability having to balance on the roller. Okay, hamstrings, glutes. We're gonna actually sit on this, one cheek at a time. You could do both, but that puts a lot of weight on the hip bone, so I actually would do one at a time. So I'm gonna tilt a little bit to one side, and you're just rolling. So again, stay off this bone, greater trochanter. Your sit bone, right there, I'm not too worried about because that's a lot more rugged. Your hamstring tendon's attached there, so it's not as sensitive. But one at a time, it'll get the muscles better. So make sure you get right to the top of the glutes, all the way down. If you need more, you can do a figure 4 stretch at the same time. So the leg that you're rolling, put that ankle up here. So now you're not only rolling, but you're also stretching your piriformis, little deep muscle in the back of the hip. And it also kind of opens that area up and lets you get to it a little more. Switch if you're doing one at a time. You are doing one at a time, I just recommended it. Good, and again, if any of this is too much, if you're new to this type of self-care, just do the rolling pin without putting your body weight on it. They make special, fairly cheap little roller tools so that you can hold in your hands. They spin. They've got little sections sometimes. They have little knobblies on them. So there's all sorts of ways to modify. Go ahead and figure 4 stretch. So that's going to stretch, open the area, and really get into that glute. Good. Awesome. We are almost there, guys. Okay. You can use the roller on your low back. Again, this video is for myofascial stuff. We're not getting into joint mobilization so much yet today. But just to kind of generally get the soft tissue, if you can tolerate it, you can just roll the back. And then you can roll a little bit diagonally. That's going to get more the left paraspinals, for me anyway. This side getting the QL, so that's a deep lumbar muscle, your quadratus lumborum. Good, and the other. So just kind of working into, you'll feel the muscle area. Trying not to just pound on the ribs. Trying to get the soft tissue. Good. If that's way too much, you can also just take that foam roller horizontally. Don't fall. And just lie on it. This is a great beginner stretch with the foam roller. So you're just opening up the chest a little bit, letting everything relax, getting a little bit of direct pressure here, but without the movement. I'm not rolling with this, I'm just lying here. So if this is tolerable but feels about plenty, just hang out here for a minute or two. So otherwise, finish up the back. You can have that roller horizontal. You may get a little clicking and popping. Again, technique for shoulders and arms is a lot harder. I fiddled around with it. I'll show you a couple things. But generally the foam roller works best on big muscle groups in terms of direct pressure. So think hips and lower body. But still, you can kind of get some of those areas in the upper back. And the stretching I'll show you on the foam roller at some point will also get you more direct work for the thoracic, the neck, and the shoulders. But a couple things that you can play around with. Getting the forearms on a foam roller like this, you have to have good flexibility. I suppose you could put this up on a table or a counter, and you're just putting some body weight onto that roller. I'm getting the front of the forearm, so my wrist flexors, the ones that do this movement. So if you have golfer's elbow or medial epicondylitis is the technical term. And then flip it over and get the other side. You may have to play with the angle to really get that fleshy part in there. So again, probably rolling pin is a lot easier, but if you have the flexibility and you can tolerate doing some weird breakdance type moves to get these areas, this does work because you're putting some pressure on it. Not as effective because you can only put so much body weight here, way out on the distal part of your limb, versus like sitting on it, getting the hips, quads. And flip it over. Get that forearm. So again, you'd spend maybe a minute to two each area. If you feel some crunchies and bumps, again, that's normal. We are trying to work out tight spots. So discomfort is inevitable with this technique, but once you get used to it, it gets better and better and you feel really good. So again, what stretching alone did for me in my 20s, foam roller work plus stretching does the same thing in my 30s thus far. In my 40s, when I hit that landmark, I don't know what I'll do. I'll have to start going to acupuncture or become a vegan or something. I'll let you know when I get there. Hopefully I'll still be making lots of these videos. All right, chest, shoulders are really tricky with the foam roller. I've never seen these taught officially as exercises. This is just some stuff I've made up. So if you have some existing shoulder stuff, be really careful. So I'm not recommending this per se for everyone, but if you can lie on your stomach, get that foam roller kind of up into the top of the chest. This will let you get your pecs a little bit. So if you're sore from lots of sitting and they're tight and all shortened, or from a workout doing lots of chest stuff, push-ups, that'll release that area a little bit. You can kind of get the length of the arm. So foam roller is a good one for family members to be like, what are you doing? Cats love it. I'm surprised mine's not here helping. Good. Switch. So again, if you have any shoulder issues or this is way too much, don't go here yet. But this is a way that gives you some direct mechanical pressure on those muscles. So if your flexibility is good and you can tolerate this without sharp pain, just discomfort, that's okay. Good. So again, most commonly foam roller is prescribed for IT band or hamstring, glutes, quads. So it does lend itself better towards the low body. But the idea, again, is just that you use some direct, non-harmful, but intense mechanical pressure, kind of like a massage. And we're just loosening up those tight areas. So that is the basic principle of the foam roller and rolling pin. So thank you for following along or just watching to get some ideas. Again, these are fairly cheap. You can get them on Amazon for probably about $19.99. I think that's what this one costs. So again, if you're brand new and just know that you're sore and stretching alone isn't quite enough, grab a rolling pin first and just start rolling those tight areas. When you progress, get a softer foam roller, and once that gets too easy, then you can go up from there, get high density, or get the one that looks like the medieval torture device that has all the knobblies on it. Foam rolling is very beneficial to help loosen up the fascia. So stretching kind of touches on fascia, but is more for lengthening the muscle also, where this stuff really digs in and will work on your knots and trigger points. So again, 2 to 3, maybe 4 days a week tops. You can get really sore if you do this too often, especially at first. But you got lots of modifications starting with just rolling. Hope this was helpful, you guys, and keep stretching, keep being fit to your best ability, keep following my videos, subscribe if you like this, and thank you for watching. Be well.